Ladies and gentlemen, your moderator, Rob Aiken, Managing Director, Deloitte.
Welcome to the Future of Advertising for TV Publishers. Thanks for coming. We have a pretty good panel for you today. We're going to talk about perspectives in the industry. We're going to dig into some of the challenges and opportunities for publishers, and then we're going to close with some bold predictions for the future. But to get things started, I'm going to invite the panel out, so come on out. These guys deserve the real round of applause, not me, so. All right, why don't we just start with some quick intros? Would love to hear a little bit about your background and what your organizations are doing with respect to the future of advertising on the publishing side. So maybe start with Dan.
Yeah, Dan Callahan, work at Fox, overseeing our audience and automated sales solutions. So that's automation's our new fancy word for programmatic. And you know, if you've seen the recent news with the sale of our entertainment assets to Disney, Fox is doubling down on live sports, live news. We want to be a destination for fans of shows to create a community of a live environment to be a part of the conversation around the water cooler, whether that's NFL, baseball. Masked Singer right now is our popular new song show, but that's the direction that Fox is headed in now.
Great. Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Dolchin, Head of Telco and Video Distribution Partnerships at Google. And my team works with, we work with video distributors, MVPDs, virtual MVPDs, OTT distributors, really helping them empower and succeed in this time of convergence and beyond by utilizing Google Ad Manager, which is our sell-side ad stack, but also using other solutions within Google that are integrated with our ad stack so that there's synergies. And some of those, for example, our Google Cloud platform, which is data and analytics, our Google Marketing Platform, as well as Android TV.
Cool. Hey, Chris Hawk. I'm head of business development and strategy for Adobe for media and entertainment solutions. I focus on helping media and entertainment customers leverage our assets, primarily our Adobe Experience Cloud, our DMP, our analytics product, and connect to advertisers that are also using our tools for marketing.
Thanks, Rob, for having me. Hi, everyone, and thanks for this probably final panel, or soon-to-be final panel of CES. I am Chief of Staff to the CEO at Xandr. For those who either didn't see the broad messaging when you walked in here, Xandr is AT&T's advertising company, and it's really brought together three parts to the business. So some of you may be familiar with AdWorks, so a leader in advanced TV advertising, sells TV and digital advertising. DirecTV's 2 Minutes. We also have a Xandr Data team, and Xandr Data is really responsible for unifying all of AT&T's 170 million customer relationship touch points and data to create an identity graph. And the third is Xandr Platform. So back in August of last year, we acquired AppNexus, which is a leading digital advertising marketplace and provides technology for both agencies, advertisers, and publishers. And so it's really these three groups that come together to form Xandr and are looking to disrupt television advertising.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So it's a good mix of technology companies or enabling capability companies as well as publishers. So why don't we start with some perspectives? I'm curious to get your thoughts on where the industry's headed. The way I always look at this is the Venn diagram of advertisers, consumers, and publishers, and how you strike a balance across the different needs of those groups to drive a business at margin. So maybe we start with consumers. Lots of fragmentation in the marketplace enabled by new experiences, and it's created some challenges for some more traditional publishers. I hear some rates of 6 to 7% decline year over year on the linear side, anecdotally, and just want to get your thoughts on if you think this current fragmentation is going to continue, or do you think there's going to be some longer term consolidation? Then we'll do the same sort of question on the advertising side, but who would like to jump in and start with consumers? Peter?
I can start.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I think the really large content providers are going to continue to be extremely critical, in the industry. But I also think that fragmentation from a content provider perspective is also going to increase. Over the last 10 years or so, you've just seen an explosion of content and choices, whether that's, if you think about just the amount of original content that Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime are putting out, and then even magazines have started to create video content, Hearst, Condé Nast, and then just the multitude of content creators who are on YouTube. There's just so much choice out there. And I think what that really means is for operators and programmers to make sure they have the best premium video experience to retain those users, because users now have so many different choices. They can easily sort of move from one place to another. What we're doing is we're trying to work with them to provide those experiences, whether that's on the content side or on the ad experience side. So I think it will continue to fragment, but there's a lot of technology out there to help curate, that can help continue to make sure the content continues to get seen, and keep people, continue to keep people
Folks
to
engaged.
love these brands.
Yeah. Lauren,
Yeah, I
Oh, sorry.
completely agree. Choice. There's more content than there's ever been before, and in order to fund that content comes advertising. And so, in order to get the economics right, TV needs to work harder, and for consumers, it's about the consumer experience. And so, whether that is the ad load, or whether that is how they can engage, or whether that is more relevant advertising, Xandr is looking to make advertising matter, and the consumer is at the center of that, because 140 years of AT&T's history has been with the consumer at the center of that. And so when I think of AT&T's ambitions to become a modern media company and how advertising fits into that, with choices and the explosion of content, in order for consumers to be able to access that, to continue to fund those economics, you're going to need to continue to keep advertising, but in order to engage them, you need to improve advertising. And so we're focused on a lot of different innovations. I think in order to create standardization, I think all of us need to think through some options to innovate on those formats. And I think in doing that, you improve the experience and make advertising a welcomed part of the content experience.
Yeah, I'll add, I agree with both of the comments here. I think it's probably going to also cause this rise of super distributors, many of them here on stage with me, that really have great, are doing a great job of delivering content to end users, but there's also going to offer a lot of different types of packages to the consumers. We're seeing with standalone services through traditional distributed TV. And each one of those comes with a unique set of maybe different ad formats, different sets of data, different notions of identity. So I think the challenge is going to be how, as an advertiser, we start unifying those kind of walled gardens or those distribution platforms, and how can I make effective buys and with nice automation across multiple distribution points.
Yeah. Dan, your thoughts?
I think it's going to come down to the user interface, the comfort with the device, the cost of access. What you get with your Prime membership, what you pay Netflix. There's a lot of consumer choices. People are going to look for shows they want to watch, content that's compelling. We think Fox makes great shows. We think live news is exciting, live sports is exciting. So we hope that people continue to look for us in those different platforms. And there has to be a partnership with the digital devices and the distribution that properly compensates the content creators for what we've done and what we've created, and hopefully driving the audience to those places that make the most sense.
So sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I wonder if a byproduct of this becomes the traditional broadcast networks start getting more focused in their properties around, for example, Fox Sports, which I love, watch quite frequently, Big Ten Network, starts to get more known and become greater. Your sports, your different programming starts taking on more of an importance and branding perspective for customers to find you.
Yeah. So it sounds like violent agreement around continued fragmentation, but in many ways technology solves for that and reaggregating audiences. What does that mean from the advertising side, though? When you're dealing with brands and agencies, what I hear at least is expectations have changed. It's about efficiency and effectiveness. It's about moving from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel. And we're here today to talk about video, which is a branding tactic, right? Very much top of the funnel. And so is it changing what they expect when they're talking to you at Fox, Dan, or is it changing expectations for Xandr, or how are you sort of shaping your message when you're engaging with brands and agencies based on all the trends we're starting to talk about?
I mean, I think there's an excitement and a willingness for us to get creative with the new company. We're being encouraged to act as a startup, be nimble, be collaborative. So content integrations into the programming. I think the sports halftime shows, the double boxes in live sports, right? The creative messaging and the interruptions can be different, that are less intrusive, not taking over the entire screen. So I think that there's an excitement to try to do new things, an excitement to hear from the agencies and the brands what it is that they want. How do you want to advertise? How do you want to get your message in front of our viewers and your consumers, and really begin to build out what that new type of ad interruption, ad integration looks like.
Mm-hmm. Any specific comments when you're talking with some of the brands and the agencies around, hey, we love this, we love your content, we're really looking for a couple other things as it relates to, let's say, measurement, data, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been an underlying theme of many conversations here is accountability, right? And it seems like some of the brands and agencies just, there's the ability to get better data, right? Impressions and inventory, even on the linear side, are moving to digital tendencies, meaning that they walk and talk and act more like a digital impression, that you can find out more about it and who it is. So I'm excited about that, because you look at the fraud and the bad actors that have kind of poisoned a lot of the space and taken ad dollars from places like Fox that have deserved to have a larger share of spend, and say, you know what, we'll participate in being held accountable. We want to be held accountable, and let's verify that your ad was seen, that it was delivered to the right audience, and the content that you came to find on Fox. So I'm excited for all that stuff. I think the tech partners that are building out different components of that tracking and delivery of the audiences and the accountability are going to be vital to kind of cleaning up the space.
All right, maybe we jump into the publisher side. I think that's really what we're here to talk about, and some of the opportunities or some of the products related to advanced advertising. So addressable, data-driven, linear. All of you have been involved in or are currently working on advanced advertising products and services. It is not easy to do. We've been talking about this a long time. Xandr, you've had a lot of success. Adobe's got a lot of capabilities, as does Google, and I know, Dan, you've been active in the space as well. Help us separate sort of the fact from the fiction with advanced advertising, and what are some of the biggest challenges in launching this business? And do you see this gaining traction now? Do you see this as a meaningful business going forward, or do you think we're still in, maybe I'll call it the mid-innings with regard to advanced advertising?
I'll take that one. I think it's just about scale, and it's about, you asked the question about advertisers and what are you hearing from them, and advertisers love addressable TV advertising, and they can't buy enough of it because we don't have the scale. And so I think part of this is unification of data, is partnerships, and I think it's continuing to improve upon the ad experiences within that. Bringing digital-like capabilities, and I'll give a nod to Peter and to Google. Google reinvented advertising, digital advertising, and I think we're at an inflection point where addressable is kind of a stronghold on that. But I think ultimately it's going to need to bleed into premium digital video as well as an audience extension. And so I think because of the scale issue, you're going to need to pull together other premium-like pieces, and it's just the technology is the greatest challenge within that. And that's why it's really understanding who's going to play what in terms of that technology stack to support it.
Yeah, I'd say maybe to play a little bit of devil's advocate, I wonder, there are some technology gaps that still need to be filled, but there's also, I think, a lot of business challenges around, again, unifying the data, making sure that data from various sources all is able to match up with mine. That's still relatively a big challenge, and all the back and forth about getting accurate audience counts, getting automation to really do addressable at scale, more MVPDs supporting addressable, right? It's only like 4 or 5 now. So there's some tech but I also like the things like maybe what OpenAP are doing, or NCC, that's trying to pool up, a lot of data or a lot of capabilities into consortiums.
So I hear two things. There's a technology challenge. There's no shortage of technology challenges, and then there's a business challenge, and some might say a people challenge. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. What I've seen, I'll kind of tee this up. What I've seen is even after you get through the technology challenges, you often have buyers that want to do a mirror mix, what they've purchased in the past, not necessarily what they want to. They don't want to go back to the brand or their client and say, hey, you know what, we have a new demo or we have a new piece of content we want to go ahead and get your advertising in front of. They're comfortable with what they purchased in the past. No matter what you pitch them on advanced advertising or addressable, it becomes a hard sell. And even on the sell side, they're tied to this upfront market. So maybe talk a little bit about what are some of the behavioral challenges in trying to sell this through to a traditional publisher, a traditional ecosystem?
I think that's a great question. I mean, to answer your last question, I would say we're early innings to mid innings, right? It still is a test and learn phase. Advertising in television, the upfront, it clearly works. It's been done the same way. Like you said, there's a level of comfort around it. And I don't know if it's as much of us trying to force feed solutions to the industry, but again, hearing from them what they want to do and how can an addressable component or a targeted component complement what you do. Because without branding and advertising, then who do you know who your consumer is, right? So those things still have to happen, and maybe, the budgets begin to shift in a sense that, 90-80% is still traditional and 10 to 20% becomes, this target as those targets are defined and they figure out who is their consumer. Maybe we're doing this in 10 years and it's no longer called advanced advertising. It's just finally called advertising, and it's, changed the way a lot of it has been done, but it's early days. People are learning, people are comfortable with what works, and, if it's not broke, don't fix it, but how can you begin to iterate and do things a little bit differently? And certain clients that have the targets defined and a willingness to do it, that's exactly who we want to talk with. We don't want to have to be a marketplace educator and having to explain to everybody why you should be doing it. If you have to say why you're doing it, it's a tough conversation and probably one you don't want to have.
Yeah.
You'd almost rather be asked for what are your capabilities and how can you help me achieve certain things.
I think that's right on. The industry is evolving so quickly. Everyone's business is evolving. There's a lot that each of these ad sales organizations need to think about. And the way in which we're approaching it with them is we want them to start by at least just changing out the underlying infrastructure platform. Not to say the trafficking system of their linear, because that is something that that they're entrenched on, they've been using for decades. But in terms of reimagining their commercial break, moving onto a digital ad server that has the ability to do a number of things. One, in terms of ad decisioning, just having the logic to make sure that the ad that you want to send to a particular person at the right time is the right ad, is one part of it. But as devices have started to explode and evolve, there's more devices. There's CTV devices, there's mobile devices, there's smart TVs. How are you going to make sure that your content as well as your advertising is inserting and serving on these platforms in a TV-like quality manner? That is an entirely different process within the ad server called server-side DAI. And so making sure that you start to implement that as a partner is another initiative that they're working on or they're focusing on. And then the third is a programmatic platform, right? There's a whole monetization aspect to this, and that entire piece of the puzzle is starting to change as well. It's now becoming less manual, it's more automated, it's leveraging data, first-party data, third-party data. And so all of these changes collectively are gargantuan when they're thinking about what they need to get done within 12 months. And we're trying to help these partners sort of compartmentalize this. There's a lot of training that happens because you have linear sales teams, you have digital sales teams. Some companies have actually folded them together, but most people, or it's actually becoming less. But at the beginning, there were a lot of people in these organizations that really didn't understand what programmatic meant, how are they going to speak to their advertisers about it, and they were afraid. And so a lot of education is required. And so we look at this as a stepping stone, it's something like you said, an iterative process that will ultimately allow partners over the next 3 to 5 years to take on all these things.
I think, I wonder how much the culture and the people start to change as TV starts to become more fitting into the rest of the marketing mold, right? I mean, TV today is it's out on its own little island with the specialists that, hey, they're buying TV and selling TV. And the data really doesn't tie back too well to the rest of the marketing stack. But at Adobe, we're obviously a very large company that has brands using our software, in particular Experience Cloud, for their marketing and their digital transformation. And as part of that is understanding their viewers, their customer journey of the viewers, watching viewers as they go through the funnel to purchase and then going through the life cycle to reacquire. And that's all going to be digitized, and it's going to be in marketing solutions. And these marketers are going to want to use that data, want to use these tools to see, hey, what's the effect on TV? And as Lauren and Peter have been saying, when TV starts to become more addressable and more using audience-based, getting census-based results back, then it starts to look a little bit more like digital. And I think maybe that's when the people and the culture starts to change.
And my point on sort of the people aspect and the business challenges with it is that just as all of the proliferation of devices and options for consumers are out there, there's also options now for publishers, and there's options for a lot of TV companies to make decisions, because there's always the advertising side of the business, but primarily you're a content business as well. And so I think there's a lot of choices as to how they want to leverage technology and what they choose to build in-house, and how certain partners can really kind of take on a larger role. And then in doing that, that's what sort of addresses the scale issues of both addressable and what we can call premium video, converged video in the future.
So maybe we dig into that a little bit on the capability side. So there's there's value, buyers are coming back, there's a scalability, or I shouldn't say scalability, there's a challenge with getting enough inventory, which is a good problem to have, I guess. But when you get into the capabilities, maybe talk us through whether you've been doing implementations or whether you've been in an operator role managing this business. What are some of the biggest challenges in sort of standing this up if you're, let's say, Fox and trying to scale this? Or if you're a technology provider and you're, let's say, doing, you're looking at attracting additional supply and then onboarding that onto your platform, what are some of the biggest challenges and what capabilities are really stand out as far as things that need to be overcome? Maybe kind of talk the audience through, if you were to go on this journey, these are the things you need to be wary of.
Lauren hit on an interesting thing with scale, right? So what is the size of that audience? How can Fox, or how can we reach that person? So the scale is an issue in that regard, but I think that the complexities now of there's different capabilities for Fox on Hulu than there is for Fox on our owned and operated apps versus what can be done on the linear television or in the set-top box VOD environment. So it's kind of patchwork together in the sense that we want to collectively define the advanced audience, who is the target that we want to reach, and then where can we actually properly do that accountability in tracking it and delivering it. And kind of using the analogy of baking a cake. It's like if we agree that it's carrot cake, the ingredients are a little bit different in different areas, and that's the challenge. Is it becomes clunky. It's not widely applied. There's no kind of standard to set up one campaign and have it reach that audience on all devices today. And you have to get people to agree that, okay, you define that the ingredients to that recipe I agree with, we can do it there, but we can't do it in that place. And I think that's the operational challenge that needs to be overcome.
And I start with the customer, and I think of advertisers and the challenges of dealing with different types of technologies. And so making it easy for them to just buy through and have, the ease to also understand measurement sort of across those different channels, I think is another thing that, with TV and all of, whether it's technology providers or whether it's programmers, it's, we're all kind of getting in our own way when it comes to that. And so I think standardization is one element across measurement, but also across, how you're actually going to buy, because otherwise if it's going to be that challenging, it's never going to end up being adopted by agencies and advertisers and ever get to some sort of significant scale.
And formats as well. Yep,
Formats.
totally agree. Two challenges that I think about. One is, and I get back to kind of like a tech challenge or a business challenge, but really for addressable to scale, I mean, I think our biggest challenge in traditional TV is the MVPDs own all the data about their subscribers, but they only own 2 minutes out of 16 minutes of inventory in a traditional ad load. The programmer owns the rest of the 14 minutes of inventory, but they really don't know who's watching. They don't have the direct relationship with the subscriber. So you can't do addressability unless the majority of the inventory, that 85% that the programmers own, is able to use the data and have the capabilities to do dynamic ad insertion. So that's kind of the biggest challenge I think is facing the industry right now. And then and that's holding back addressable, bar none. But once that gets solved, and we hope it does, we think Adobe authenticates about 100% of TV everywhere today. 600 programmer apps, 650 MVPDs, and we do a data exchange for the authentication, so we think that maybe we can provide some technology and some help to bear on that problem. But once that gets solved, then we have another challenge I think that advertisers have, and is when do I use an addressable ad on a campaign versus when do I use a good old-fashioned linear ad? There are some industries like QSR, FMCG that, you know what, they want national reach, they want it at efficiency, and a good old 30-second spot on a very popular content is the best way to do that for the ad dollars.
What has to happen in order to solve the problem that you just mentioned around data and the addressability challenge? What's the solution?
Well, my thesis.
No, that's back
Is there
to
a
Chris.
community garden here?
Sorry, Chris, that's back to you.
Oh, no, welcome to talk with me off stage. I got a great idea for you.
Well, I think you brought it up when you first said the distributors here 2 minutes, they get the data, programmers here is testing ground 14 minutes, they don't get the data. The thesis is you need distribution, you need direct to consumer touch points, which leads to the right data that you need unified, whether it's in a digital environment, CTV, OTT, or linear. You need the premium content and you need technology. And I think it's really around having those 4 component parts in order to even attempt to solve this. And I think it's the window of, we call this panel Future of Advertising, and it's sort of like the future's sort of now. You said it before, -7 next year, and honestly probably worse for traditional linear. And, I think that it's no longer talking about the future and what's going to happen because it's last year and it's this year, and, these things need to start to come together soon.
Yeah. Maybe jump to data or dig into data a little bit more. Given recent news over the last, let's say, 12 months, is data becoming more or less important? Is targeting becoming more or less important? If you're top of the funnel, as I mentioned earlier, as a video experience, how much do you really need to target if you're a CPG company? Have we gone too far? Are we too focused on some of these things?
I think we've gotten very focused on these things and maybe have gone too far in the variety. There's a million different segments available, combinations with and or ors in the Boolean logic to make the audience whatever you want it to be. You hope it gets easier, that it becomes an auto intender. Maybe there is a core set of 15 audiences that become standard that are beyond age and gender, and it's an iteration, like we said, of all right, it's an advancement, it's beyond the historical measurements, but it's not, a fully baked out first party segment, something like that.
I mean, I think, the TV industry has been looking at digital and saying, I want the type of targeting capabilities that exist there. And so, historically, the TV industry has been really focused on GRPs and age and demo, and this is, addressable is the first time in which it sort of unleashes all these other targeting capabilities. What we are also sort of preparing for is now set-top boxes are starting to become IP as well. And so while it's important to have all of the initiatives around addressable as it relates to QAM set-top box or legacy set-top box, once more and more set-top boxes are released in an IP manner, you essentially sort of are able to leapfrog a lot of the issues that we're all dealing with right now when it comes to current addressable TV. And Android TV is one of the ways in which Google is approaching that. So Android TV is actually an operating system that is baked into many different devices. And there are around 120 distributors around the world who are now using it as their operating system in their set-top box, including DirecTV. So that essentially really does, over time, start to mitigate a lot of these issues. And we hope that that's one way in which we can start to bridge the gap between TV and digital and make it easier for the industry to move forward and do these things across every screen, which is essentially what advertisers are looking for, it's what publishers are looking for, and it's really what users are looking for, because then they are able to, we call it in the industry frequency cap, but it makes sure that you're not seeing the same ad on your mobile phone and then you turn on TV and you see that ad again, and then you turn on your tablet or a smart TV and you see the same ad again. Now we have a holistic understanding of what's happening across every screen, and to a large extent, that's a bit of the holy grail.
I think data is, obviously important. I would have joked a couple of years ago, the issue is the fragmentation of audiences because they're watching on different devices, and how can we resolve them? And I think my joke now is kind of like all the fragmentation of device graphs, right? Like, raise your hand if you have a device graph, right? It's like everyone, right? So it's kind of like, whose device graph wins? Well, I think it's kind of the advertisers. If I have a campaign, it's my first-party data, and I know who I want to watch. I've gone through the digital transformation. I have my data in a customer data management platform, such as the Adobe Experience Cloud, sorry for the plug, and activating it through Adobe Audience Manager, or DMP. Well, then I want to use that data, and I want that because that data is being used for my multi-touch attribution. It's being used for my mixed modeling, and that's the data that I want to use, and I want to execute it across everyone else's graph.
That was well done. It was like an Adobe product 3 times in the
Yeah,
sentence.
that was
Plug,
pretty
plug,
good
plug,
product
plug.
placement. Yeah, impressive, Chris. Maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the other solutions that have been introduced into the marketplace along with addressable. So OpenAP comes to mind, right? Thoughts on it's been well received. It's a little unclear to me how much it's being used, but maybe thoughts from this group on what needs to happen for it to sort of gain additional traction and really take off.
I'll take a crack at it. I mean, I think OpenAP, if there are more partners that subscribe and join, right, the collective sum of its participants are going to drive its value. I think, again, the accountability of collectively defining the audience, sharing a post back on what actually happened and performed on that campaign. I think that the core backbone of why OpenAP was created and founded, makes a lot of sense, and it is there to provide value to the brands and the agencies to prove out that and justify the linear investments that they've made. And I do think, if there's an independent consortium of participants to create their own measurement that then works with Xandr and AT&T's data, or Oath and Verizon's data, or Google's data and Facebook's data, I mean, maybe you can get it to a place where there's 5 or 6 core currencies, and publishers and content producers will work with advertisers to make the right allotment of impressions available, decorated with those 6 or 7 currencies applied to it for measurement, and things hopefully can get a little bit cleaner. And like you said, there's still a variety of targets, but maybe it's simplified and they're better defined. But that's the goal of OpenAP, what it is, what it has been, and hopefully where it continues to drive interest, attention, and excitement.
Other thoughts?
I just like the concept of it, right? It has the opportunity to change some of that dynamic of how do programmers kind of get and lobby for, more audience-based, drive scale and addressable, and also audience indexed advertising buying by drawing big scale because they're grouped together. You can do buys across, let's use your same audience segment as an advertiser across all of the programs that are involved. So conceptually, I love it.
I think it's a fantastic initiative and effort. I think what makes me nervous or less confident is just when it was announced and where we are today. And so time is of the essence. We sort of have a moment in time to, again, do what Google did for digital and do it for TV. And there's a lot of pieces that you need to do it. And I think it's just about driving that urgency, and time is of the essence.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on as far as opportunities or new innovations that you think are going to have a meaningful impact on the premium video space in the next few years that you'd like to share with the group?
I would just raise programmatic TV. And I know that it's a very confusing term because addressable and programmatic, and a lot of people don't really understand the difference. The way we define it as addressable is what we were discussing thus far, really being able to utilize targeting consumers or people on set-top boxes. Addressable TV is about using automation and data to create a more efficient workflow. And advertisers are really used to, or there's a growing use of programmatic on the digital side. And that's also started to happen on digital aspects of set-top boxes, so video on demand. You're able to use your digital ad server to insert on TV VOD, on set-top box VOD, as well as all these other digital devices. And the next step there is, how do I then start to transact programmatically? And there's 3 different flavors, Google, of programmatic. You have, in terms of transacting, you have programmatic guaranteed, you have programmatic non-guaranteed, which is more of a private marketplace, and then you have open exchange. Programmatic guaranteed is one new innovation that we're really excited about. It allows you to essentially do a direct deal, a reservation type traditional deal with a advertiser, but you are essentially automating the entire workflow of it. It takes around 40 steps for a typical ad to be trafficked. This brings it down to around 6. It saves a lot of time, and it's extremely efficient. That's what ad sales organizations are looking for. That's what sort of the corporate entities within these organizations are asking all of their different groups within their company to try to find efficiencies, and this is a huge efficiency. And we think over the next 5 years it's going to continue to grow across different devices, including the set-top box.
I think that's the scary term with programmatic, is it's bidded in digital, and that's where people in linear television get scared very quickly, is that, like, let's take that confusion out of it. Programmatic linear television is not biddable. I don't think it will ever truly be biddable, but it's about automation, right? There's human error, there's multiple touch points. How can we accelerate the process, make our sales planners' lives easier? And I think that there are great technologies that can speak to the ad servers to help reduce that friction and speed things up, help us do more faster, more efficiently on the automation side, and programmatic is used to define that, I think.
So, and I think you do some programmatic at Fox. How have you tried to drive adoption to get around some of those challenges?
I think for us, there's, our ad server is called Paste. There's a push to Paste functionality, right? Where in the beginning, when we started doing programmatic linear, every sales planner hated me, hated my team. Now that those orders can push to Paste, they like when they just get an accept button and the order populates, right? So we're becoming easier to work with, more fun to work with. The adoption of it there is, comfort in the pricing, comfort in the fact that we're able to price things the right way, expose things that we want to sell or we have a desire to make available in this fashion. Maybe that's a self-service component. Things that I've thought about is like, is this a scatter replacement? Is it a DR replacement, right? Maybe there's a part of a DR marketplace that goes automated and more transactional first, and we can continue to increase the adoption, the acceptance from there. But, those are kind of the early days starting points that we've begun to explore at Fox.
Yeah, I think for us at Xandr, we have a really good test and learn environment with DirecTV and with our sister colleagues at Warner Media with Turner. And I think it's really about yield as well. And so, you know, you touched on it, and you touched on the fact that with linear, it's not going to be biddable. And, you know, solving for yield and doing so in a way that can then, especially between programmer and distributor, because there's nuances between the both of them, I think is a really, really critical capability and something that we're focused on when we talk about our TV platform and the TV solutions from a technology standpoint that we're going to be continue to focus on and hear more about later.
Yeah, I agree. When you start getting into a phase or a place where you can use data and machine learning to start to optimize the, you know, the revenue and the experience of the viewer, right? Because you maybe know the viewer, you know what they like when to show ads. Obviously, the ads will be targeted, and that starts coming into the mix. I think that starts to become really interesting.
So we'll open up to Q&A in a minute, but we'd love to get your bold predictions for the future as it relates to the future of advertising. Maybe start here with Dan, your bold prediction.
I don't know how bold it is, but I think Netflix serves ads in the next
I think I've read that somewhere.
3 years.
Though, so
They
you got to
have
come up
to,
with your
right?
own.
I think, oh, that's not bold enough. I think that maybe going back to bundled sort of MVPD type subscriptions becomes popular again. I think cord cutting in the beginning was looked at as a cost savings, you know, maybe go and get certain things, but it's gotten expensive.
Yeah.
You try to now patchwork together. My friends who prided themselves as cord cutters now are overpaying for things that they don't use enough. So maybe it's back to that bundled model. What is the content creator distributor relationship and how does that work out? But is that bolder? Is that where it's
bolder,
take it?
yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're not going to like mine then. So I don't know how bold this is, but I do think over the next 5 years, you're going to see big technology companies like Google and others really playing a more active role with TV publishers, meaning that the home, the living room and beyond are going to become smarter, and we're going to be partnering with them so that the entertainment experience is brought into that equation. So think about voice and assistant technology, you know, being able to not only ask, you know, your Google Home or your Alexa, like what the, you know, any of the things that you typically ask it, but you're now actually asking it to change the channel, turn on this particular show, find a show with this particular actor, and it automatically just happens on your TV set. Or if you're in your car and you want to DVR something, you just say, you know, okay Google, DVR, you know, X, Y, and Z tonight, and that automatically gets DVR'd on your television. Those types of experiences over the next 5 years are going to absolutely happen, and we're really excited about partnering with the TV ecosystem.
I guess my bold
I'm not calling them the ecosystem, with TV partners.
My bold prediction is second week of January 2020, I'll be here at CES. In Vegas 4 more times for conferences this year. But kidding aside, you know, I agree with kind of what Peter's saying around the experience. I'll look at, you know, me as a consumer here. It's now there's so much good content out there. You know, I just want who's going to deliver me the content I want with the best experience, right? Make it seamless for me so I don't have to grab the 3 remotes sitting down here and switch it between it. So, you know, I also kind of joke around I want the slider bar as a pay TV subscriber. I want the slider bar on how many ads, more ad payload and I'm paying less money, but slide the slider bar over here and I'm going to pay higher monthly fee, but I'm going to get less ads. And maybe we customize it for me that I get less ads during binge watching programmatic episodic content, but for live sports and you know, news, fine, I'm good with ads there. So I think that there's a lot of improvement to go in TV experiences. Look forward to seeing those.
Okay, I'll recap first. So Netflix serves ads, Google delivers technology. You're at CES and you have an improved binge watching experience. Mine is, I guess, less of a prediction and more of an ambition and a hope, which is I hope we don't ever say advanced TV, addressable TV. I hope the notion of sort of those adjectives get removed because I hope that everything is addressable and everything is advanced and there's no nuance. We don't call it advanced digital. So I think that's the hope. move on to refrigerators from ice boxes.
Got it. All right. Good predictions. Want to open it up to questions. I think there's a mic floating around, or this box. So just raise your hand if you have a question for the folks from Google, Adobe, Fox, or Xandr, and they'd be happy to answer it. It's a tired
Answered
group.
everything.
those
We
couches-
answered all.
couches look
Or it's
comfortable.
day 3 of CES.
Day 3 CES is tough.
You didn't let me talk about Seal.
You can feel free to share with the group that Seal performed, I guess, the other night, and it was amazing. All right, well, I have probably one more question, but before I ask that, is there sure no questions from the group? Here's one. Good catch.
Check, check. So I'll let you unpack the bold prediction that Netflix is going to be on a subscription model, and just ask for you guys if you sense that in this golden era of content production, if that subscription model is beginning to sag under the weight of it, or if it's something else that's sort of giving you this sentiment.
I mean, I think great content's expensive to produce. Sports rights are expensive to own and have, and there's got to be a balance of, ad-supported. Like, how are the content creators going to be compensated? I think Netflix spends a lot of money to produce content. I don't know if there's that many more people in the country that are going to be able to afford a Netflix subscription, in all honesty. So, not to pat Hulu on the back, but I think that they have an interesting approach of, like, what is your time worth? Do you want to not see ads and compensate us for creating the content or distributing the content? And others will say, you know what, a lighter ad load where maybe I'll able to share my data and those impressions can be delivered to me addressably, and there's more value in the advertising that can reach people who are willing to share a little bit for a lighter ad load, and then people who say, I don't want to share any data and I don't want to pay anything, and I will sit through a 2.5-minute ad break. I mean, I think it's about consumer choice. They're going to sign up and subscribe to things that they want to watch based on the content that's distributed on those sticks, platforms, devices, and it's going to cost money, and you're going to kind of pay for it either with your time or with your wallet.
When I think of Netflix specifically, I also don't think that they would introduce advertising in a way that as a consumer you think about advertising. And so I think they're going to probably do it in a ninja-like way. And I agree, though, that from the cost of it, that's something that is just fairly inevitable. And if you start to look at, sort of on a programmer basis, look at affiliate fees and sort of the growth of affiliate fees against sort of the growth of advertising with viewership decline, it's easy to start to predict channel closures. It's easy to predict the inevitability of decisions on whether I want to be in the ad sales business altogether. And I think it's a really interesting approach, but in summary, I think AVOD, SVOD, it's the only way it'll fund the content. Advertising just has to exist. It may just look different. You may not know that you're being served an ad, but you're being served an ad, and that's how it's funded.
Yeah, I agree. Advertising will continue to exist. Consumers want that to subsidize their TV. I also think subscription model will continue to exist. The thing that we're seeing, again, as we authenticate TV everywhere, is kind of the new challenges. How many people are going to be sharing passwords and sharing, the paid TV subscription model? So I think that starts to become an issue, or that starts to be an interesting thing that we watch as TV, instead of, hey, this subscription is to this TV, hey, this subscription is to this email, and how often can I share that, and what are the rules around that? I think that'd be a pretty important thing that the industry has to work out in the next couple of years.
Great. Any other questions? Silent group. All right, if no other questions, then I just want to thank the panel for your time. This has been fantastic. Appreciate your thoughts. And if you want to stick around and ask, if you did have questions you didn't want to share with the group, I'm sure they'll be available for a couple minutes. So thank you again.